My name is Tichaba Mutsielwa. I'm from the Speakers Firm. Welcome and thank you for choosing to join the Empower Entrepreneurs Digital Conversations, a COVID-19 conversation hosted by EmpowerWorks. A very special welcome to the keynote speaker, Dr. Bandile Masuku, Gauteng Health MEC. We have a broad representation of stakeholders joining us directly via Zoom, and they will post their questions in the chat box. At the end of the keynote, we will answer as many of your questions as possible. To get the direct invite to all our talks, please remember to go to the WhatsApp number 082-088-5262 or visit the EmpowerWorks website, where you'll also get information around Empower Men, Empower Women, Empower Youth, Speakers Firm, Leadership Summits, as well as other events. We are live on the following EmpowerWorks digital platforms: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, as well as on the website. And the hashtag that we've been following is #EmpowerEntrepreneurs. COVID-19 has changed the world. What hasn't changed, as the president said today, is that the health of people comes first. I hand over to you now, Dr. Bandile Masuku, Gauteng MEC of Health. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone who is able to join us today, and thanks for joining us. It's important that we start by acknowledging what the president said today, and I think it has been a primary objective of the South African government, leading to ours developing a response plan against the pandemic, against the spread of the pandemic. So my talk is also based on the basis that we started the whole response to the pandemic on the issues relating to universal health coverage. You would know that last year, one of the important things that we undertook as the department, our national department, was to adopt and produce a bill on the national health insurance, which deals with universal health coverage. The whole objective and the principle of the universal health coverage is that everyone should be able to have access to health care without them suffering what in the terms of the United Nations, suffering financial burden. So it's an important thing that we start there, because when we acknowledge that life is sacrosanct and life is so important, and then all the other things will come in later. So the issues that relate to COVID, relates to the history of the COVID that started to emanate from in China around December, essentially, which was started to be identified. And the physician who made the first call about seeing viral pneumonia, a pneumonia that is caused by a viral infection, made a call and he was not accepted, and his advice was not taken serious by the Chinese government. But then later on, we know now that in January, that virus was identified, that pneumonia was identified, and the virus was identified, and the disease entity was defined, abbreviated simply as COVID-19, meaning that it's a viral infection caused by a coronavirus disease, which was discovered in 2019. So it's important that we address the few aspects about what is currently happening and what would happen in the future. And because I am talking to entrepreneurs, so it will be an important aspect to address some of the opportunities and few aspects that we need to learn from and also understand actually moving forward. But one thing that is important is that the world will never be the same after the pandemic. And I think as a species that deserves the future, we need to adapt and we need to change our ways for us to be able to move forward. And this pandemic has actually, in a sense, carried a big impact on our lives and also in terms of our survival as a species. And one thing that I would want to do is just to cover the basics in terms of statistics, which I think all of you would know, because I'm certain that you are following the trends, the national trends, and also following what is happening in Gauteng. The important aspect is that Gauteng is a province that is number 3 now in terms of current active cases, and number 1 being Western Cape, with the figures of Western Cape being around 27,000, and followed by Eastern Cape with 4,900, and then us with 4,800. And these are the figures that are confirmed cases that we are looking at. But the most interesting aspect about the COVID-19 is also to look at the recoveries and also look at the death rate. And as we speak, Western Cape has got 651, and we have got 40 cases as we speak as of today. The minister will confirm some of the figures later on, and then KZN. And then we know that the issue of dealing with the pandemic, it won't be an issue that be about how we manage the transmission and slow down the rate of the transmission. The virus is a very infectious virus. It enters our body through mainly the respiratory system, and it actually then infects the lungs and then infects all the other parts of our body. And hence, it has been found that the initial diagnosis was on the viral pneumonia, and everybody will remember, which is something that I will talk to you about the need for ventilators and everybody following that, and I will actually explain why. So the issue about the virus is that it has changed its form, not as a structure of the virus, but how it has been observed from China to Italy to the United States and now Brazil. And we are now seeing Africa actually coming up with the infections. So we know generally that 80% of the population of any general country will be infected, and in those 80%, only 20% will require hospitalization. So these are facts that are important, so that as an entrepreneur, you need to understand the basics, and you need to understand what the viral and what the COVID-19 as a disease entity is all about, so that you can be able to see which opportunities are there. So with the current rate, we are seeing that even in South Africa, we are going to be faced with the similar situation where the majority, close to 60 to 80% of the population will be infected, but the majority and the bulk of those who are infected will not even have symptoms. Only around 20% will have symptoms, and around 5% will require hospitalization, and hospitalization less than around 1% will require ICU will require ventilation or will require critical care. So if you have to look at it from the point of view of entrepreneurship, it means how do you position yourself actually going forward. And if you look at it from that point of view, the lockdown is the most blunt instrument that we have used, and it has been used in other parts of the world, and which interrupted basically all economic activity, essentially, except for those who maybe were in production or were in the space where they can be able to sell or produce or even provide supply PPE, which is one of the things that I think is a major commodity that actually will make entrepreneurs excited and to make them more to be more innovative actually moving forward. So the impact of COVID-19 basically, besides causing the infection, it's the measures that have been put into place that have got a greater impact on the economy, as I've said. So if we have to look at how going back now to different levels of the economy, from the different levels of lockdown, from level 4 to level 3, opening up of the economy, which we know that we spent almost 40 days within the level 5 and level 4, which had a greater impact in slowing down the transmission, but had a very disruptive and a very deep impact on the economy and also on the poverty. And it also indicated to us that we have generally underestimated the poverty. We've actually underestimated food security. And this is what we need to be able to talk about as entrepreneurs and what actually should be actually happening. But one thing that is important as entrepreneurs, that everything or any contribution you make should be around dealing with the COVID-19, but it should be data driven. It should be driven by science, so that you don't make wrong decisions or make wrong choices in terms of investment on what you need to actually to invest on. But most importantly, it means that you must invest on solutions, and those solutions must be based on actually science and also observing the facts and also observing and understanding the whole disease pattern. You would know that PPE is one of the things that I normally say it in public, that PPE is going to be one of the major commodities that will be one of the defining entrepreneurs' success in the next coming 2 years in the country and also in the world, mainly because of the issue of the shortage that is there and actually also the demand that is there. So opening up the schools means that we have to look at those aspects that talk to PPE, how people will protect themselves from the spread of the infection. So here, when I'm talking about PPE, I'm talking about masks, I'm talking about gloves, I'm talking about visors, what they normally call face shields. I'm talking about gowns. I'm talking about a whole lot of things that can be produced and they can be. So that one is the one that is for certain that you would be able to make some aspects into it. Though we need to innovate more, bring more solutions into that PPE and see how it can be allowed to evolve and change around. Because one of the things that we have realized, like the aprons that we procure, some of them are not that of quality, and you require to have some way of how you can produce an apron that can work. In Steve Biko Hospital, they actually turned a waste bag, the black plastic bag of waste, into a very nice inner part of an apron that you can wear, which doesn't move around and which it won't shrink when you are wearing. The issue of visors is so important. So the other value chain on COVID-19, most of you would know, and I think most of you who are investors have invested a lot of money on ventilators, because the initial disease pattern that was there was a disease pattern that was saying the ventilators might be the way to treat actually COVID-19. But over the next, for the past 2 months, we have realized that people who have actually used ventilators actually had very poor prognostic outcomes, and it's people who were almost at the end stage of the disease, and we didn't have much benefit. So we have shifted quite a bit from using ventilators to other means of supporting the body during the infection. So the ventilators is one of the things. So that's why I was saying to you when I had said that we need to resolve problems, we need to provide solutions, but over and above that, we must follow science and we must follow the data that is produced. The second part of the whole thing is that besides the PPE and ventilators, everybody was going into what you call the spraying booth or the sanitizing booth or the tunnel, as it said. But now also we know in terms of science and in terms of data that there's less benefit on it. And it means that there would be a number of entrepreneurs who would have spent their last investment in actually procuring and even investing in the business for tunnel. The other part is the testing kits. The testing kits, we know that most of the testing kits that we have, there's a global shortage of testing kits. There are different types of testing kits. And if you follow the whole thing, you know that the antibody testing kits, where the market was opened up and it was flooded by the antibody testing kits, which usually are not used. The antibody testing kits are not used to diagnose, but they are used only to check if you have been exposed to a virus before, not to even declare you that you are actively a patient or diagnosed as a COVID patient. So there is a stricter scientific process that you have to follow for you to get to register your testing kit with SAPRA and also with NICD. But I see that now there's also a movement of people moving towards actually testing kits. And it's something that is there. The other aspect of the entrepreneurs, I'm just looking at all the other solutions that are there, is the issue of field hospitals, where people have put up alternative building technology for them to be able to provide a quicker solution, for us to be able to provide enough room, enough space, enough beds for us to be able to treat patients who will require frequent hospitalization. But like I've said when I started with the statistics, that we are looking at a very few number of patients that will require hospitalization, and we are looking at very few people that will require even actual ICU. So it becomes important that we look at this particular field hospitals in a different light. From the side of Gauteng, we had taken a posture that most of the investment that we are going to put more investment on the issue of alternative building technology, but within our own facilities, so that we build capacity within our own facilities, so that beyond the pandemic, we are able to utilize utilize those facilities and those space and even repurpose them for something else. So these are just the value chain that is there, and I think there's also the one on where the more people use the mask, the more the people use the gloves. So you need a very decent and a very effective way of waste management, and also it becomes one area, one opportunity actually that is there. And the issue of digitalization, it's obviously inevitable. We need to get more and no-touch approach on many things that we have to do. You've seen that the recent innovations in most of the airports, in most of our public spaces, you find that you don't even have to touch when you go to an ablution services, you don't even have to touch a tap, you don't even have to touch anything except maybe not having to touch your own food. So that's the only thing that we know. So digitalization is one space that we need to look at as one of the options, as one of the possible aspects of it. And there is a prediction that a lot of infections will be going forward. But I think the most important thing is to build the capacity of the healthcare system to be able to deal with the pandemic actually going forward. The important aspect again here is that our problem with our entrepreneur space is that there's a very few companies of local production. And it's something that as provincial government and as government, we are looking at moving forward, because now we are clear that we are stable with the stocks that we have. We can be able to now support and even invest in building entrepreneurs that are going to be able to provide this PPE actually going forward. And this is something that we need to look at and see how we can be able to do. So I just want now to summarize what I said. I think I've spoken about the role of entrepreneurs and how they should use data and use science so that we make correct investment and we make correct. You don't put money on something that might not come out to be very beneficial. One case in point is the issue of the tunnel sprays, unless something comes out from it. And also the agility of the system. The healthcare system needs to move very quickly and faster to a digital space where we don't have to be using paper, we don't have to be using pen when we're in the facility, and patients not to be walking around with files and so on. So those are things that aspects and opportunities that are available that we need to look at around the issue of agility and actually digitalization. And the issue of us opening up the economy, it's not doubt that we should do it, but we need to be very cautious in doing that, because the spread of the virus itself might be out of hand. We are seeing the figures are going, the statistics, the numbers are going skyrocketing, and it might mean that we need to do some of the things different and even review some of the decisions that we've made. And everybody has been talking about the peak. And when people talk about the peak, I get a bit uncomfortable, because the peak is like people are talking about drowning. It's like when people say, let's plan of when you are drowning, what you do. So I don't want us to get to a point where we are drowning. So I don't want us to get to a point where the healthcare system is not coping with the numbers that it has. So it means we must put a whole lot of effort, as we have done, to make sure that we create the capacity within there. So entrepreneurs must come in and be able to provide these solutions. For me, you are the individuals that can make a change and make a positive change in this regard. I know that the issue of nepotism, the issue of corruption and all that has been a big problem in doing business with government. Other things just that how, as a department in Gauteng, we have contributed in the demise of many businesses in the basis that we had a very difficult to pay our providers. But the COVID-19 has given us enough space and opportunity to be able to have enough, and also to be able to deal with our accruals and also pay off most of our historic debt. Because we looked at and saw that when we reprioritize our budget, yes, dealing with COVID will be one priority, but the second priority is just to create a very stable health education system. So we are clear that the COVID was looking at it from the point of view of being an opportunity to strengthen our healthcare system and also to make sure that we are able to interact with entrepreneurs. There are spaces, there are things that I normally say to people that there's always a stampede. Like now everybody wants to produce cloth masks, everybody wants to sell ventilators, everybody wants to sell tunnel sprays, and I would want to see more innovation on things that are not easily stampeded by everyone, things that are novel, and because anyway we are dealing with a novel virus. So the solutions that we produce as entrepreneurs must be the solutions that not anyone else can be able to actually to duplicate. And then you create your own niche and you are able to develop a brand within that. So I just wanted us to get into the space just to talk about the space and how we can be able to level the playing field. In the past year, even during this year we've been able to engage with entrepreneurs. I'm hoping that we're still going to get more space to be able to engage and deal with that. We have initiated an internal audit process because all our processes of procuring and of receiving donations and receiving money should continuously be evaluated and assessed using the highest standards of auditing and accounting standards, so that we don't get to a point where there's favoritism, there's nepotism, and there's generally transparency and fairness. The unfortunate part about the impact of the pandemic, one of it is just that the regulations that were produced by Treasury, which gave space for a number of systems that actually using emergency national disaster procurement processes to be able to that. And also you will realize that there was a lot of engagement with the Treasury regulations, which some of them were rescinded and some new ones were produced, just to make sure that we open up the space for everyone to be able to try to play a role here. So in summary, program director, is that the COVID-19 has given us, has got a very negative impact on the lives of people. But beyond that is that the impact of it is more at the more social and economic level and activities. And it's only the measures that has to be done. So I would want to have a discussion that speaks to more of more of what we can be able to produce as solutions, produce as innovations, and also utilize our talents and skills. And I think for us as government officials, it becomes so much important that we are held accountable and we are held to try to provide opportunities, particularly to women business, to youth business, and those people who are living with actually disability. And this is one aspect that we need to use this pandemic as a good opportunity. Whilst we are saving lives, whilst we save lives, we also need to make sure that we demonstrate the capacity to build our economy, do more local production, and make sure that we're able to provide more jobs that we can be. The Department of Health and Gauteng has got 6 priorities. We call the sixth one a +1 because it's not really related to health, but it's related to economic activity. So one of our priorities is about us making sure that we use our fiscals, we use our budget to contribute to economic growth, to contribute to job creation. So I would want to see a situation where entrepreneurs, also when they enter the space with that consciousness of providing solutions, creating jobs, and contributing to economic growth. And there are a number of aspects that I've alluded to. The most important thing about the ideas and the solutions that we provide and that we bring forth must be based on science, and it must be based on data, so that it becomes a solution that creates impact in the lives of our people. I'm hopeful that the other aspects of the talk, we can be able to deal with them whilst we deal with questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MEC. I'm going to put my video on for the sake of people that have just arrived to say I am here. However, I will switch it off because I need to get closer to the screen to read the questions that have come through. So if you don't mind, let me switch my video off and then ask the questions. One of the things that somebody commented on is you got the brief right. You are talking to entrepreneurs and you already outlined how they can become part of the solution. I'm going to start with the question from Bandile Andonis. Bandile says, given the magnitude of the pandemic, is it not advisable to ensure that all procurement is kept within the quotation limits, 500K and below, then spread the supply throughout a number of suppliers with the same terms of reference. I anticipate a crooked selection process where large numbers of items are requested or rather expected to be supplied by a single service provider. That way, most SMMEs will participate without compromising quality, transparency, and the people's right.
Yeah, I think that has always been wherever I've served whether as a chairperson of a university council or anything. In terms of the policies that we make, the most important aspect is to introduce new entrants and is to also break down monopoly, because we have also realized that there's general monopoly on many aspects, actually in the business of health. Or the other thing that I forgot to say is that if you want to make money, you should invest in health, but you need to make sure that it's innovative and so on. So I agree with you that we need to diversify and make sure that one piece of cake can be sliced in different spaces so that everybody can be able to benefit. But the most important thing is to make sure that our regulations in terms of quality controls, in terms of costs, and in terms of the number of people that will play a role. So that's what we need to do, and that's why one of our priorities, even before the pandemic, was also about that we need to make sure that we introduce new entrants in all the business spaces and in all the sectors that we take it. For an example, the issue of waste management. There's been one company that has been dominating the area of waste management for the past 15 years, and it's something that is unattainable. Young, small businesses that are coming up with new technology don't have the space. So we need to be able to provide that space and make sure that we create a protection type of thing to allow everybody to take part in that in that space. So in brief, is that I do agree with Pindile that that's what we need to do, and I think it's important that we are held accountable, all the time. Because one thing about government and one thing about us is that if we are not held accountable, we are not made to account on decisions that we make, we might not actually also the good intentions and the good aspects of everything might actually fall off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MEC. Herman Radali says, South Africa imported up to 90% of medical supplies / PPEs while we were strengthening production capacity, especially on masks. The industry is flooded with Chinese masks and local products can't have space. Shouldn't government regulate imports of masks and only procure 90% of locally produced masks going forward?
No, Herman is spot on. I think the initial spurt or the initial part of the response was to stabilize what we saw as a very dwindling stock levels in the country, and hence now we have shifted space and focus to make sure that we are able to get around and see companies that are township, cooperative driven, young, youth, women, that we can be able to procure this. And we are going to do that. I think people who are involved in the space of PPE should keep, will also involve Empower where we're going to get something like a bonanza or an expo where people who've got stock in hand, because that's what is important now. People, even if they've imported it, but we just need to make sure that the stocks that are available in the country must be in the hands of those who require it, which will be healthcare workers. It will be unfair that small businesses who went to China, for an example, or wherever, go and buy and stock and we don't buy the thing. So we need to be able to cover that aspect first, and then secondly, give the local production a good opportunity. One thing for certain about PPE is that it's nothing that is going to go away. Its demand is not going to go away with COVID. It's still going to be there. It's still going to be there. That's why I'm saying, I said in my introduction that we might need to innovate more and develop more different type of PPE that will be more relevant to South Africa. And like I said, I made an example with that waste bag that has been used as an apron in Steve Biko. Thank you.
Thank you, Missy. Entrepreneurs like a straight line. Trevor is asking, as entrepreneurs who see opportunities, how do we engage with the Department of Health in Gauteng?
you know, the aspect about it is that we're trying to open up and make sure that our supply chain becomes an important thing. And you would know, I think people who are in that, you know, that space is not a very easy space to trade in, but we want to democratize it. That's why the idea of the expo as a one big thing that we're going to do is to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to showcase what they have in stock, so that we then able to contribute to that economic activity. So we are also available in social media, you know, spokespersons, myself, and everybody. And I think it's important that people can have to be given an opportunity actually to put up their ideas there. So the opportunity is there. It's open, and I think maybe let me declare it in public here that I run my own social media page. So whatever comes to me and I respond, you must know that it's not somebody else. It's actually me, and I normally do respond. And the ideas, for me, I like new ideas. You know, ideas that makes us think outside the box and not get stampeded where everybody is. You know, and that's why we need to get rid of the stampede of those who've got stock on PPE and get those who are more on local production, but also with an angle of innovating. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Because this is a space for entrepreneurs. While we share ideas, some entrepreneurs are reluctant to share what their innovative ideas are, but will want to somehow get access to you. We'll see how we can assist. And they see their ideas are their IP and they don't necessarily want to broadcast them here. So we will see how we can help them to get a hold of the department.
No, that's really
yes. Even though I come from a school of thought that says a good idea grows by being joined by others, but I guess it's up to the entrepreneur to choose who those others are. Randy is saying, why are people fogging schools that have been empty for the past 2 months? Hence, the virus is dead. Why aren't we fogging basic places like malls, even if they are privately owned?
Good question, and that's why I insisted and made an emphasis on the point of science and data. For some of the things and business things that decisions that we make sometimes don't make a whole lot of sense, you know, because, you know, truly, if you can't disinfect an area that has not been infected or decontaminate an area that has not been contaminated. And also there is the jury is out there, is out to even decide whether fogging is it one of the things that one way of how we can decontaminate. And what I read in terms of science, and which I try to pursue with everybody, that fogging doesn't really decontaminate actual spaces. The actual act of decontamination of spaces is in actual fact wiping and cleaning that space and using appropriate actually material, because this virus that we're dealing with is not really an airborne type of actual virus. It's a virus that sits on surfaces, that sits on ground, and it has got variety of duration and how much time it needs for it to survive in different surfaces. So for you to remove anything that has to resemble this virus, it means you must be able to wipe those spaces or wash those spaces or sweep those spaces, something to that effect. But the one of just blowing solutions or peroxides or anything on the air doesn't really effectively deal with the virus, because the one that is on the surface might still have actually time to survive on that surface. I think science and logic is so important. The tunnel is another example, you know, that we have seen it. When you travel overseas, people have seen it. It has been all over in the news, but the value of it in terms of science and literature is zero. You know, the testing kits is another one. Mainly flooded. You know, FDA, I think they said it approved over 120 testing kits in the United States, and everybody bought and stopped, only to find that it's those testing kits don't even have an impact. They can't even detect any virus for that matter. But that's why it's important for entrepreneurs that you always have to guide yourself with science and data. That is the way that you can be able to get relevant and make sure you make money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, this is just a personal comment, just to say, yes, when people have moved into that space and they haven't used the science, sometimes we think that, wow, it's their loss, but they are really trying to help to eradicate the virus, but sometimes you do get to miss it. Joseph is asking an interesting question because you've already answered it, but like all these questions, usually it's the end that becomes interesting. So let's go for it. So Joseph wonders only says, the level of corruption has increased during this period, especially on procurement. Are there measures in place in convening investigations? If yes, will this task be disseminated to young entrepreneurs in the investigation space, or rather entrepreneurs who have investigation companies?
Yeah, that's I think the most important aspect is that we need control systems. We need control systems that we can be able to utilize and make sure that they can even see if there's any wrongdoing. I like our system now that we are trying to build up and build on as Gauteng government of e-invoicing. Since we initiated e-invoicing, so meaning people putting their invoice electronically, it has actually improved our turnaround time in terms of payment because it has reduced any person who's a human interference on processing an invoice. That's something that has to be done. But the corruption is a societal matter, and I think we need to build more capacity in the area of forensic systems that will be able to detect that. And like I've said, Gauteng, there's a Gauteng auditing service, accounting services, which we call GAS, which does our internal audit. It has already done the first part of all the procurement and all the donations and gifts that we have received, and they've already produced a report. So I think this is where we can be able to say, as an office, that we can confirm that any other person who comes with the capacity that's there, we need to make sure that we can give you the space where you can, partner with a big company so that you build your capacity after some time that company can be able to disappear in the space. But we need new entrants everywhere, even in that space of investigations. Thank you.
I muted myself. Sorry, Messi. I'm going out onto our digital platforms to acknowledge Thabo and Son. I think for Thabo's question, you've already answered it, where we said we got best material in the country than Chinese from our companies that we're not even aware of the product might be the solution. Best material for PPE procurement as far as research went. So Thabo, the MEC, has already addressed that entrepreneurs can step forward, particularly with PPEs, because that will continue to be something that will be required. Classy Hopper here on the chat says Madagascar had proved to use traditional medicine, which works for them. When will South Africa use traditional medicine, which is scientifically proved to treat this disease? And when is the state going to investigate the city of Wuhan about this breakout pandemic? The two-part question there.
Yeah, the issue of traditional medicine is quite interesting because I think all of us, maybe even in this chat, maybe 80% of us have actually used lingana or used umhlonyane or any other herbs that our grandmothers have actually given us in trying to resolve some of the symptoms. And these are old tradition herbs that have been there. So we have a work stream which is constituted by African traditional health practitioners, and they've been working with UJ on the issue of umhlonyane specifically, or lingana, to see how what are the added values that we have. But we all know from where we are that it does work on the on symptoms, particularly flu symptoms or cold symptoms. And it also helps with a lot of gastro issues like when you've got constipation and other things. So this is what we know, but we need to create, like I said, we have to use COVID-19 to be able to open up spaces on avenues that usually will be closed by different policies and everything. But we are one of those who believe that we need inclusion of African traditional knowledge system, particularly in health, to be able to do it. Half of us, like I said, these are our first aiders. Most of us do visit Sangomas as the first part of going even before they go to a GP. So we just need to include them in the system and give them more space to be able to play that role. And we've had a number of engagements with them currently, and they've had a lot of programs, and we are going to still to see more of them in the space. The one other aspect that we were toying around was the issue of creating spaces within our own facilities where they can be able to come and play a role as African traditional health practitioners in that space. Thank you.
Thank you, MEC. I'm going to Sono on the digital platforms on YouTube says, our company had an idea to train 3,000 healthcare cleaners under the OFO/QCO and use RLP to improve cleanliness in our hospitals. We had a partnership with UIF and I think it's WRCTA. Can we pitch again? I guess you can answer that, or I can tell him, go pitch again.
To come and pitch again, and I think maybe the first stop could be a clinic nearby or a hospital nearby your place, so that you can then pilot it there, give it as a pilot. And if the facility manager and the CEO are impressed with the whole thing, then it can be, it can be done. The system is quite big, so everyone can be able to pitch an idea and be able to try to come up with something that is pretty much helpful in that regard. We have to just make sure three things: that we can't lose jobs, we have to create more jobs, and we have to make sure that our health system is continuing to work. So that's what is important. So pitching, we have to pitch, and we must continue actually knocking. And with social media, you can knock until somebody opens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Here on the chat room, Herman Radadi again says, SMEs have registered on the Gauteng Provincial COVID-19 website as suppliers of PPEs. However, they don't receive any request for quotes, but the Premier has reported that almost 100 million PPE items have been ordered so far. It's a statement, not a question. I guess one could say, what did Herman mean?
I think it's a human interference, and it's something that we need to deal with. And hence we did bring in the accounting services, because we opened up that portal for us to be able to get different and variety of people to make their pitch and make their services and supply available. And it's one of the things that we have actually noted as a weakness in that portal, because that portal apparently has got more than 13,000 companies that have actually registered there. And what I know is that the complaint that I have received is that very few, if not any, have received calls from us. So it's something that we need to be able to do. So one of the things is just automation, So when you put in a company and an RFP or RFQ is set out, it's easy to pick up from the system who has it, and it should be there, available. But it's something that the export that I've spoken about, it's something that needs to cover up for that weakness that is there, so that we start and almost improve on our system. But it is a problem here with SEM, and I think all of you as entrepreneurs would know, all of us struggle and all of us will have a problem with the people that interfere in the SEM processes. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, some entrepreneurs want me to ask a question without jumping to everyone. This is a simple one. It's about registration with SAPRA and NICD. Why is it so laborious?
Because I also asked that question earlier on, around March, April. But the thing is that the whole market is flooded with usually test kits. I think if you can just put on Google, say test kits for COVID, you will see that there's a number of them that are available out there. FDA opened up that floodgates, and you know that when anybody comes and says FDA approved something, for them it might mean that automatic actually usage. But also we have to now put on our own systems to make sure that we only get quality test kits that will also be able to validate. So the process is quite laborious, but I've soon realized that recently that they have actually made it sure that it's shortened, but it's laborious because what comes out of that process, something that we can vouch for, and it's not something that we can say confidently. It can be actually utilized. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm appreciating that on the chat, people are already interacting and deals have been done. Or people say, I've got this, I want funding, and people are saying, come, I can sort that out. So that I find interesting.
No, that's good.
I think you've already addressed this one from Mohau about the research around Murunga and so on. So I'm quite comfortable there. Let me see what else is coming up. Some of these questions are quite long, but please bear with me. So Debo says, Doc, we have self-isolated by default for 70 days. Why didn't health sector use that opportunity to tell us what to do or take to fight this COVID? Well, that will have actually helped those who are asymptomatic.
The issue is that there is no treatment for COVID-19. I must put it out there firstly. There's no treatment. So what we do, as doctors, maybe it's something that we have not shared with you, that even when you come and say you've got flu, and you consult me, the major things that we do in our treatment for flu is to resolve symptoms, because we know that your body is the only weapon that you have against the flu virus. And even now, our body is the only weapon that we have against COVID-19. So what do I mean? It means we must optimize our body to make sure that it is optimum enough and able to produce immune response as soon as we get the infection. And how do you optimize it? There are things that you need to do: drop the temperature if you've got fever. If you're running short of oxygen, we give you more oxygen. If you're running short of fluids, we give you fluids. Rehydrate you so that your body is optimal in a way that it can be able to mount a proper response. So this virus, like all the other flu viruses that we have dealt with, respiratory viruses, that it is self-limiting. It all depends on how your body responds to it and how quickly you produce antibodies. But we know that 14 days with infection, 14 days in your body, your antibodies will be produced and you'll be able to neutralize the infection, the infection actually going forward. So it's important for us to just say that the treatment that is there is just for you to treat the symptoms and also make sure that you boost your immune system to a point that it becomes, that's why during winter, everybody advertises your multivitamins and all the other things. And those who grew up in the rural area, that Mshonyane was a daily staple when it's a winter season, just to make sure that you prime your immune system to be able to deal with any other infection going forward. So there are a number of things that we need to talk about. That the people stayed away from herbs and traditional or vegetables or anything, the discussion about them boosting the immune system because it was associated with cure for HIV. But I think that discussion at that time, garlic, beetroot, everybody does those things now because that's the only way that our immune system can get vitamins into our system and be able to have that. So I think people have become a bit apprehensive when you talk about herbs and those, because then you'll be called garlic or beetroot or something, Dr. Beetroot, which is something that, unfortunate incident that happened to our former late minister, may her soul rest in peace, Mamtsima.
Thank you very much, MEC. There are a lot of compliments coming your way. Some of them are about your hardworking and being the future leader on the highest level in your political party. So, and many, many others around the work that you have been doing. So let me focus on the question, but just to acknowledge that there are many compliments that are coming your way. The one is about when is the, let me just acknowledge the person who's asked this question. It's Zulwazi. Mzawana says, how far are we with NHI and what are the challenges?
We have used the the response to the pandemic to strengthen our healthcare system in terms of our facilities, in terms of our digital systems, which we are putting into place as of now. But the most important aspect about the universal health coverage or NHI is the preventative part of it, because we want to have a sustainable healthcare system if our healthcare system remains hospital-centric. So meaning that we all deal about cure. We are not talking about prevention. Maybe a good example about everything that the burden in our facilities currently, or if generally, is about alcohol use, trauma. And if we can be able to regulate alcohol effectively, we can be able to prevent a number of unfortunate incidences that normally occur, on a Friday night, for example. The past few weeks of a lockdown, our trauma doctors were almost they've never seen it like things like that before, where their units were quite empty. And now with the introduction of alcohol. So prevention is one of the things that we need to be starting to talk. And now the COVID-19 gives us a greater platform and an agency to run preventative programs and primary health care programs to make sure we strengthen our system. So we are in the process. So I think we might reach the point where we can say we are pretty much ready for NHI if we continue in the light on how we respond to the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, MEC. We are at that point. We are 4 minutes away. And as I did promise you, based on the engagement, you'll have time just to wrap up what some of the things that you've had. There are so many questions, some of them really go into the detail of asking about a man who allegedly got 120 million PO for PPEs and went to buy exotic cars, and is that true? I'm not sure if it's for you to enter into those conversations, other than to say corruption and any investigation or anything is something that you have already outlined, that it's been looked after. If I was to just now post a question for you, MEC, given the whole point that the president made to say that life is the most important priority right now, and as the economy opens, for the entrepreneurs who joined the conversation a little bit late, how can they assist you to help to preserve life and to save lives? What are the critical things that they can do?
The most, because we are dealing with a new situation, and it keeps evolving over a period of time. And like I started, everybody was talking about ventilators, excited about ventilators, and people put a lot of effort, innovation on ventilators. Some even produced even the most cheap and very effective ventilating machines, which I think going forward for any other cases of a respiratory nature, we might be able to use them. But it has evolved, from that. And so for me, it becomes that every innovation or every solution to save lives must also speak to what is there out there in terms of data, in terms of the science behind your innovation. There is a basic one that was done in Charlotte McCracken, used Perspex glass, where they call it an inchu box. But to find that in New Zealand, it's been there, in Taiwan, it has been there, but something that was innovated here to help just to protect actually to protect the healthcare workers. So there are a number of things that we can be able to do. But for me, the most important thing is to make sure that it's relevant and it's science actually driven, and we follow data, because some of the things that we see as solutions, some of them are not, you can see some of the people are serious chance takers, but I think there are young people out there who are producing a whole lot of good solutions in that space. So for me, that's what I would say. Let's save lives. Let's look at what can save lives around the science, and let's get in that space and see how we can do it effectively and much better. Like now, the issue of the triggers, a predictive model, like now everyone is modeling. So we'll go through to Twitter, everybody's got a modeling system, which they are putting out there as the most effective that can give us a predictive when the peak would be. So there's a number of opportunities that can be looked at. Waste management is another one. We're going to see a couple of masks being thrown away in different spaces. So the climate issues might become a big challenge, which is a point that I wanted to actually raise in my remarks, that one of the things about prevention of future epidemics and pandemics, they are all around actually climate change and what happens to the earth, the scarcity of water and the heat that we might face. So that's what I would say, that let's get solutions. Thank you
very much. And Umenzi Sandile Kumalo has raised his hand to say he runs a medical laboratory in Johannesburg CBD, and it's been declared a hotspot today by Department of Health of Gauteng. Can my lab be used to clear backlog? Just now, you know that there is an entrepreneur, somebody who's running a lab right in the heart of the backlog, who is raising their hand to say they're there to help, and if they can just get an opportunity to engage somebody. We have run out of time, MEC. For those who joined us today, we're in conversation with Dr. Bandile Masuku, Gauteng Health MEC, just to understand how can entrepreneurs help during this COVID-19 pandemic, and at the same time save lives. And of course, entrepreneurs offer solutions that can make us more prepared going into the future. We have run out of time. Thank you everyone who joined us live on our digital platforms. We try to answer as many questions as possible, and have a fantastic weekend. And once again, MEC, thank you so much for your engagement and keeping us in the loop. Bye-bye, everyone, and thank you once again.
Thanks.